Well, hello everyone. Welcome to Rainmakers Roundup. I'm your host, Mark Iorio, and today I've got Alfred Goodrich on. Alfred is the founder of Silvertone Studios in Ardmore, and he's also the lead singer and I guess you're the head cello. How do I say this, buddy? Celloist for the Alfred James Band.
That's correct. The only cellist.
And listen, man, I have swear to God, I've never met anyone in my life that played the didgeridoo except for you.
Okay.
All right. So how about that?
Correct. And I think one of the shticks with the band is that I play the cello and the didgeridoo at the same time, which is can be a little difficult at times, but it's something most people have never seen before.
That's all right. Geddy Lee played a number of instruments at the same time. You're just you're in that category, brother.
Thanks, man. Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome. Great to have you on the show. Really happy to have you. By the way, I just want to mention this, Alfred. You responded to something that Route 1 Views promoted, and as a result of that, you're on the program. I cannot be more delighted to have you here. It's a great pleasure. And I didn't realize that Silvertone you're one of the biggest, if not the largest studio in Philadelphia. Tell us about it, please.
Well, we have one of the largest A rooms, that's for sure. One of the largest main recording rooms, and we're certainly one of the busiest, if not the busiest, studios in Philadelphia. We've been constantly booked as many sessions as we want to run for the past, 15, 16 years.
Wow.
And it's been a tremendous blessing, especially with a lot of the other studios downtown closing, etc. There's some big studios in Ardmore that actually closed. But we've just enjoyed this very persistent workflow client base, and once people start working here, they tend to stay, and it's been a tremendous blessing.
Oh, that's great news. That's great to hear that. It really is. I've talked to you before. You're just such a good person, and you got so many good qualities. Your career path has been a little bit different. I mean, I would consider it a little circuitous. If you can tell us a little bit about that. I mean, I think you started out in chemistry.
I did. I actually worked at Pfizer briefly, which is of course in the news now. They're doing great work, so root for the home team. And I had always kind of done music in my spare time. Mm-hmm. My dad was a surgeon, kind of plays heavily into the story. He was a surgeon, but had a bad stroke when I was 5, and ended up being pretty severely disabled for my lifetime.
Yep.
But when he was 50, had started playing the cello. And unfortunately was 55 when he had a stroke, so he didn't have that long with it.
Right.
So in 4th grade, when it was time to pick out an instrument, I was like, we had his cello, which I still have, and I kind of figured that I'm sure he would just love to hear this thing being played again, and ended up picking it up and playing it, and I think it was like about my 3rd or 4th year in, and he talked a little bit differently. It was like, well, I never could make it sound like that. And he was so happy just to hear his cello again. But I kind of never really took it seriously. I was very much into chemistry and science. Yep. And physics, and I just had this fascination for how the world around me worked.
Sure.
I wanted to kind of look at any object and think about how it was made and the different, chemical composition of it.
Yep.
And I kind of just thought music was as not being that serious a career. Mm-hmm. And went along that path in college and was a chem major. I took a ton of music classes. I always loved it, and I was a principal cellist in the orchestra, and I founded an a cappella group called the Connecticut College Con Artists, which is still around.
That's funny.
And then, my senior year, my dad was living here in this house in Ardmore, mm-hmm. And he just wasn't doing too well. So he was, God, he must have been in his 70s then. And I started working at Pfizer just after I graduated, and it was really clear that he needed someone here to take care of him.
Wow.
I unfortunately lost my mom. So there was really no one kind of around for him. So I made the kind of tough decision to come back home. I hadn't been able to spend a lot of time with him in college because I was very kind of caught up in some athletic activities. And I just wanted to spend some time with him. He's an amazing, amazing human being. He actually pioneered the first canine liver transplants.
Wow.
He was a Silver Star recipient, full bird colonel in the Army. Served, he was all up and down the peninsula in Korea.
Wow.
Actually a surgeon on a MASH unit. So he has his own story, of course.
Yeah.
And just like, he was very brain damaged. Like he had a size of something the size of like an apple in the back of his head that was completely gone from his stroke.
Wow.
So he just needed some care.
Yeah.
And I came home to take care of him. And I'm like, you know what? I'm putting a lot of time in as a caregiver, but I have a little platform here that if I wanted to try music, I could.
Yep.
And after kind of interning briefly at another studio in Ardmore, I started recording people in my bedroom for $10 an hour, and literally built this kind of mini empire out here in Ardmore from that. So very, very humble roots. And it all kind of pivoted around finding a way to have a job where I could take care of my dad.
Wow.
And of course, being here at home, he was here he unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago at 92.
Sorry to hear that.
So nobody really expected him to kind of make it that long, but he had a tremendously wonderful, enriched life, and all my students would come here, and my sessions would come here and just talk to him and interact with him, and he just loved seeing everybody and talking about their music. So it just ended up being a win-win, and everybody loved my dad.
That's great. What a great story. What a great son. What a great son you are to do that. It's not easy to do for a youngster. You know, it's really hard to do, and you know, it's just a blessing that you did what you did for your father, and now you've grown Silvertone into what it is today, 16 years later. Tell us about the studio, Alfred. Let us hear a little bit about it.
Well, it's the entire first floor of my house. I don't know if you know Hitsville, USA, in Detroit, where most of the great Motown recordings came out of. That's actually just a standalone house.
Yep.
So there's definite precedent for making good music in a domestic environment, so to speak.
Sure.
People actually love it here because they get this combination of incredibly high quality audio, and then also like a really chill, relaxed atmosphere. I have clients that, you know how to work my coffee maker in my kitchen and come in and like make themselves a pot of coffee before we even start. And it really kind of helps people create. I think that recording studios can be really stiff and just kind of imposing, and dealing with nerves and just the psychological aspect of things is really important. And I think once people see that it's a casual environment, I'm a very serious and intense engineer and musician myself, but the vibe when you come in is very relaxed, and I think that's one of the keys to helping people open up and do their best work. Well, I can give you a tour at some point if you want.
I'm going to take you up on that. You know it, and I'm bringing my co-host from Morning Coffee, Lisa Manioki, with me. That's for sure. But
all right, excellent.
You know, music can be to the layperson, Alfred. It could be intimidating, and you know, a lot of people who want to go into a recording studio are afraid or a little skittish about doing it. And you've developed an atmosphere there that is, you know, laid back enough, but serious enough so that people can come in and be as creative as they possibly can. I mean, that's critical, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's music is tough. I think it was, there's a classical composer named Hindemith who said that it's not, and I'm paraphrasing, that it's not, the music of a culture is not what exists in its churches and its concert halls. It's what exists in its living rooms and churches.
Yeah.
And I feel that really there's music in all of us.
Yeah.
And it's just a matter of finding it, tapping into it, trusting it, and learning to kind of color outside of the lines.
Yeah.
And once you can do that and you give yourself the freedom to create in that way, it's incredibly rewarding.
Yeah.
But I have tons of friends of mine who were classical musicians and just kind of burned out. They kind of took the opposite career track where
Sure.
they're just like, this is really hard and intimidating, and it doesn't have to be at all. And there's so many people in the world, and there's so many different tastes and styles and what people enjoy, that if you make something, especially if it's unique, you'll find an audience on this planet for it.
You're right. You're right.
And that's what I would recommend. You know, I started out studying classically, but I was like, you know what? Well, it's actually a quick story. When I was a little kid, my parents were, you know, opera fans and classical music fans, almost to, you know, like they had a couple like Jimi Hendrix records, stuff like that, but it was almost the exclusion of everything else. And I remember when I was like 5 years old, and I was finally tall enough to change the dial on the stereo.
Yeah.
And I could like listen to other stations. I was like, oh my God, what is all this stuff? And it was like a whole new world like opened up. And that's why I feel like this mixing of genres and just helps so much to keep you relaxed. And it's all about finding the right style and temperament of music to fit your personality and the way you want to express yourself.
That's great.
So if it doesn't feel right, you know, look somewhere else. Like if I'm doing a rock show, I'm playing cello, you know, and I have classical chops, obviously, but I would get incredibly nervous playing classical music, like just horrible stage fright. I did my big Carnegie Hall solo cello debut with the Philly Boys Choir, you know, like 9 years ago, and I went on stage and my cello was bouncing off my chest from my heartbeat. And I'm like, this is wonderful, but this is also just, you know, nerve-wracking. But when you play a show with the band, you know, if I mess up a note, that's part of the vibe of it. And It's like, okay, well, maybe I meant to do that, maybe I didn't.
Right.
But you can always just kind of improvise your way around it. And it's that little bit of randomness and luck that used to be a tradition in classical music. People don't realize this, but you know, in the Baroque area, like when Bach was around, and a little bit even before with Corelli and Vivaldi, like these guys would be improvising through the shows. You know, the music was a roadmap, and it wasn't quite so strict as far as the performance practice. So, like there were hip, cool, chill people all through history.
Right.
You know, it's not like, you know, people doing music from like 300 years ago were not cool or hip. They were also super cool.
Yeah.
It's just that we have academicized everything backwards and said, oh, no, this is the way they did it. You know, just kind of like what people have done with jazz and saying, oh, no, it's really strict. But no, the people that were creating it were super, super cool. And we have to keep that in mind when we're making music.
Absolutely. How do you find? How do people find you? What's the? Do you have a marketing plan, or is it just mostly word? You're laughing, but is it mostly word of mouth? Right.
Marketing plan.
spoken like a true marketing genius musician, right?
Exactly.
That's pretty funny.
It's been a tremendous blessing. When I first started the studio, when I was like up in my bedroom, I would just call my friends. Like I had a big Rolodex of people, and I was like, hey, you want to record something? Like I'm setting this stuff up. And but that was like maybe the first year, and like kind of since then, I just get phone calls. I get phone calls and I get emails, and it's been really self-sustaining. I have business cards, and you know, I'll occasionally hand out a business card, but that's literally all I do. And you know, I don't know, like maybe if I like advertised, I could like cherry pick clients even more, but I really just kind of appreciate a little bit of the randomness of people contacting me, and it's also self-selecting, people that hear the work, hear what we do here, like it, and then want to record here. So it's kind of self-fulfilling in that respect. But this is literally in, I think what I started in 2000, right? Mm-hmm. So it's been 20 years now of having the studio. I was a little wrong with my dates. And this is by far the largest marketing endeavor I've ever kind of like tried to do or had done to me. And thanks to Peter Evans for like sending this my way. I'm like, I would have never done it.
Yeah, never exactly. Give us a little case study or a moment where you were really proud of someone who came in. They might have been a little intimidated with a recording studio, but you brought them in and they recorded something, and now maybe they're not super duper stars, but they're out there promoting their music.
Oh man, I have so many stories. I have two clients that come to mind, Dante Bucci and Dwayne Large, and they're two of my best friends, and unfortunately we lost both of them a couple of years ago. Oh, but Dante was a handpan player and became world famous playing the handpan.
Wow.
And in part because a lot of the recordings that he made here. And Dwayne Large is another classical guitarist that started his international career from recordings made here. But I think one of the most impactful to me stories is the classical guitarist that performed with my band, a guy named Lynn Pompa. Mm-hmm. And he was like, just when the band was starting out, he had us by about like 20 years. So he was or maybe 15. I'll give him 15. He was this brilliant classical guitarist. He had a day job, so he didn't do it full time. But he has a hearing disorder called Meniere's disease.
Okay.
And he was profoundly deaf.
Wow.
But he had this incredible musicality. Of course, like people that know the story of Beethoven, he went deaf in his later years and wrote a lot of his best music after losing his hearing.
Yep.
And Lynn would play with us, and he would just memorize all the music and just kind of watch our hands and just still play wonderfully.
Wow.
And I was like, Lynn, come on, you got to come in and record your songs. You got to record. And he waited. And finally, just a couple of years ago, he came in and we made these recordings of all of his original compositions.
Oh,
and they're just devastatingly beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
But that's the real kind of magic of the studio, other than like editing and auto-tune and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I think that the genuine magic of the studio is being able to capture these moments.
That's awesome.
And for posterity, it's when you come in and you perform, it will never be the same way again.
Yep.
You will never have the same emotions exactly. You'll never have the same technique. The stars will not be aligned in that same exact way.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, okay, but every once in a while, it's just absolute magic. That's cool. It's lightning in a bottle. And those are really the days that I cherish as far as coming to work.
Yeah, we're going to have to take a quick commercial break. That is a great story. I love hearing that, Alfred. That's why you do what you do, right? So we're going to come back after the commercial break. We're going to talk about a little bit more about the passion behind why you do what you do. But I really want to get into the Alfred James Band. I mean, I know you're very humble. You've been on national television. You've been all over the world. And I want to talk about that as soon as we come back from a commercial break. Don't go away.
All right, thanks.
Dragonoski Taylor will help you move through and beyond your divorce. We are a full-service boutique family law firm located in Blue Bell, Pennsylvania. We handle cases in Montgomery County, Chester, Bucks, Delaware, and Philadelphia counties. We have 6 highly experienced lawyers and have represented clients for more than 30 years regarding these issues. Our clients depend on us to sort through the complicated issues involved in divorce and division of assets, spousal and child support and custody. We listen to them, we gather the information, and we help them make informed decisions. We pride ourselves in our knowledge and our experience. We try to settle cases when we can, but we zealously advocate for our clients at trial as experienced and successful litigators. If you need help on any of these family life issues, please call us for an appointment at 215-542-2105 or check us out on our website at www.shemtablaw.com.
Welcome back to Rainmakers Roundup. I'm your host, Mark Iorio. I'm with Alfred Goodrich. Alfred is the founder and owner of Silvertone Studios, plus the lead vocalist and head celloist and didgeridoo player at the Alfred James Band. Man, first of all, I love saying the word didgeridoo. I think that's just a funny name, and to see that instrument, you know, it's an Australian instrument, isn't it?
It is. So the original didgeridoos were logs hollowed out by termites, and the indigenous Australians ended up figuring out how to make music with them. My sister was actually studying in Australia, in Adelaide, and then kind of one day out of the blue, I got this didgeridoo in the mail from her with little instructions on circular breathing and stuff like that. And it's just been so much fun.
Oh my God, it sounds like it. So to talk a little bit about the passion behind Silvertone and why you do what you do. And, you know, some of those stories that you just told us are just incredible. And that to me speaks to the heart and soul of what music is all about.
Well, you know, I really believe, and this comes from working with a tremendous number of people and personalities and musicians, that everyone has that kind of spark inside them. And everyone has the potential for greatness.
Yeah.
And when they come in, the first thing that I need to do, or that I do, is I get to know them. And what people want to hear, I've found, is not, you know, you're singing or you're playing or stuff like that, but it's what personally are you bringing to the table. And it's if it's your song, if it's the way your voice sounds, and the kind of humanity in your voice, and really it's your personality. And most of the time there's a way to talk to people and to have them feel really comfortable so that their kind of natural character and charisma starts to really express itself in the studio.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, I don't care if they have like the graveliest voice or whatever, there's always something there. There's always something to latch on to. And you're like, you know what? Okay, that sounds a little interesting, but like this, what you're doing here, people are going to love. And, you know, 9 times out of 10, like once they kind of found that thread and they start pulling it, there's just more and more there. And it just tends to really open people up creatively.
That's cool. Tell us a little bit about the Alfred James Band, Alfred. It's, you know, you said you were trained classically and you play the cello in more of a rock style band. So you've been all over the world. Your resume is just, it's fascinating. I encourage people to jump on your website just to look and see what you've accomplished as a band over the last, you know, decade or so. Tell us about the band.
Yeah, thanks so much. So I'm actually pretty much self-taught on cello.
Wow.
I had, you know, my dad's cello at home, like I said earlier, and I took it to school for orchestra. And, you know, had a smattering of lessons, like 1 or 2, but didn't really actually start taking lessons until college, which is just so late. You know, it's like you're too old to start your Jedi training.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But, you know, and then ended up like getting some serious lessons with Gloria De Pasquale from the Philly Orchestra, and actually like honing my craft finally. But the kind of key with the band was that I started writing songs on acoustic guitar in college when I was like, maybe chemistry is not exactly the way I want to go with my life. But I didn't know how I could perform with the cello because you have to sit down normally. So I invented a strap, and this is like in 2000, to stand up and play the cello and sing.
Wow.
I'm the first singer-songwriter to do that with a cello, and now it's kind of become a little bit of a tradition in the cello playing community, with some other good friends of mine doing it and doing it wonderfully. And it's just been really helped kind of bridge the gap between something where you're sitting down playing and it's classical and it's restricted to standing up and singing and really kind of emoting like that, like in a rock and roll kind of way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the band's been amazing. Not just a creative outlet with my songs and music, but the touring and the people we've met. Some of the places we've performed, one of our most recent kind of triumphs was I was performing with members of the band at the Vatican.
Wow!
And and like God, we've done shows where there's like 20,000 people in the audience, and there's no other feeling like it. I can't even tell you.
Yeah, you've been on stage with some giants, and it's amazing to me that just the inspiration of who has inspired you in terms of the music has been, it's just incredible. If you look at like a Dave Matthews Band and and some of these other folks that have inspired you in music, who really has. Where do you find inspiration, Alfred? Where does that come from? I think I have a pretty good indication based on our conversation, but where do you find inspiration? You've been amazing. I just have really enjoyed this conversation.
Thanks. Well, the feeling's entirely mutual. I've been interviewed a good number of times over the years, and I just have to appreciate the homework you've done. And there's no like, so why do you like music? I'm like, oh man, I gotta like, like you've been wonderful in specific questions.
Yeah.
And it's just been great getting to know you personally over this process. I have to say.
Likewise.
I think a lot of the early material of the band was about my mom. Yeah. And losing her at 15 was really tough. She had an incredibly, she's a phenomenal woman. She was all but her dissertation in philosophy. She was a professor at St. John's College in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And, had this beautiful idyllic family with my dad being a surgeon and my younger sister and me, and with this beautiful house. And then my dad had a stroke.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, my mom went from this idyllic life to having 3 dependents. Yeah. So my sister and me, and then my dad, who was severely disabled, yep, put herself through law school, dragged the family across the country, like trying to like make ends meet. We landed in Philly because the family was on tough times. Yeah. And took the bar at Villanova, passed it so well they didn't make her take the essay section, and it became a class action litigation attorney at a firm in Haverford. Wow. And then unfortunately, a year before she was going to be made partner, got leukemia. And was gone a year after. And that was hard, because at that point, my dad was there, but not there. And then actually losing my mom, it was a really tough time. So I actually, from there, I was going to Lower Merion and ended up not going to school. I stopped going to school, flunked out. And a friend of mine was like, hey, why don't you try prep school? So I applied to some prep schools and had luckily good SSAT scores and got into the Hunt School of Princeton. They gave me some scholarship, and I was able to just turn my life around.
Man, I'll tell you,
it's these kind of emotional trials that we go through. Yeah. that really inspires. And one of the most inspiring things now, I recently got my degree in music composition from Westchester University. So now I have my chem and now my master's in music comp, and I'm going to get my doctorate. Maybe Temple. I gotta figure that out.
Yeah.
But I recently am fiancéed. I proposed to my then girlfriend, Cara Mulder, who
Awesome.
is a fantastic soprano soloist. She's right now studying at the Academy of Vocal Arts, but she's going to be singing some roles with Opera Philly and Opera Annapolis. And my most recent composition is a song dedicated to her for soprano and piano.
Alfred, I cannot thank you enough, brother. It's been an absolute pleasure. You've been an inspiration to me. I'm so happy that your Silvertone is so successful, and the Alfred James Band, forget it. It's just world renowned. So thank you very much for joining us on RVN TV's Rainmakers Roundup. I will definitely take you up on that tour in Ardmore. Thanks, my friend.
Yeah, gotta bring your boy by.
I will. Thank you so much. All right, ladies and gentlemen,
Mark.
that is a wrap for Rainmakers Roundup. We'll see you next week. That was a great interview with Alfred Goodrich. We'll see you next time. Have a good week, everyone.